go to fishstripes.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this edition of Fish Stripes Live. We are here tonight to preview this upcoming series between your Miami Marlins and the visiting Chicago Cubs. Let me introduce everyone to the panel we have today. First off, obviously, we have the usual suspects, Eli, Kevin, Adam. Isaac is somewhere hiding. He might join us. And our guest, prospect analyst, one of the best out there, Mason McCray. Mason, it's great to have you on here on the show.
Thank you, guys.
The first thing I wanted to ask everyone here, going into talking about this series beforehand with the Washington Nationals, did not go well for the Marlins. I want to go really quick on this. Marlins did lose that series, but there was a bright spot in who else? NL Cy Young favorite, should be the winner, will be the winner, Mr. Sandy Alcantara. Kevin, you have not been here in a long time. Give me your thoughts on the Aces start.
It's been a while. I'll give you that one. Yeah, I'm glad to be back for this one. I won't be on, unfortunately, next time. But Sandy, yeah, another complete game. I don't think you could solidify Cy Young more than it already has been. I think for me, it was for sure when he got that the complete game against the Dodgers, best team in baseball. But he does it again against the Nationals, fifth complete game this season. So if he gets two more, it would be tying Dontrell, I believe, for in season. I think I was looking at that today. So hopefully maybe he does it. I don't think he will, but if there's no one close to Sandy right now for the Cy Young, I was talking about this with Isaac and Arm on Unfiltered, that there's really nobody close. You can mention maybe Fried, maybe Julio Urias, but that's really about it. Sandy's a Cy Young, and Sunday made it even more clear that this is the guy.
Sandy Alcantara is a fucking stud. Absolute stud, Sandy.
I haven't used that as much as I should. We should probably use that like once every other show. Yeah. Peter absolutely nailed it. This was the clincher. This was it. This closed out the race. He just needed a couple of these statement games down the stretch to remind people of why it is that he is who he is and why the season has been so special. And what's been so special about this season is working so deep into these games. Most of his games going 7+ innings, allowing 2 runs or less. And in this one, I mean, his fastball velo was as good as we've ever seen it. There were, I think, over a dozen pitches of this game that were 100 or higher without even having to round up because of it. Like, his fastball was absolutely electric, and it still had that run to it. Like, even in the zone, it was dominant. And obviously that's what you would hope for against this Nationals team, that somehow they lost to the previous 2 days. I don't know how that happened. We were all very confident that this would be the one series the Marlins would win. And somehow, especially on Friday, that was just agonizing. It just goes to show you that nobody is an automatic win. Like, you need to actually earn it sometimes, especially with this really weak supporting cast, and he earned it. This was another great performance from him. It showed him that he's finishing strong, and the gulf between him and everybody else in terms of volume is just impossible for anybody else to overcome. It's to a point where I believe he has locked it up, whether it's 2 starts remaining, maybe 3 if they squeeze him in the last game of the year. But this was, as Kevin said, already the 5th time that he's gone the distance. And that's what you need to do sometimes, where you really just need to beat up on the teams you're supposed to beat. It's been a tough schedule for the Marlins the last few weeks. Like, the reason why he's struggled is because the quality of competition he's gone up against has been really fierce for most of the second half of the schedule, and finally taking advantage of, obviously, a very weak opponent.
Yeah, I wanted to get Mason. You do prospects, but I wanted to ask your thoughts on Sandy and just what you're seeing from him this entire season of baseball. And just for you, do you think he is the NL Cy Young?
Probably, yeah. He's not my favorite pitcher. That's probably DeGrom, but DeGrom really hasn't pitched that much. So, I mean, Sandy's probably the best.
Yeah. Adam, your thoughts on Sandy start versus the Nats and just maybe where he stands right now in baseball?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I've been on the record before stating like about a month ago that is probably not as tight or it's not as like far like side of a race that it is. It's probably a little bit closer. But obviously now as we've seen Sandy with the extra like complete games in the past couple of weeks, even with the somewhat like bounces against the Dodgers and I think against also the Mets a few weeks ago, and also Atlanta. I still think that he's really probably your favorite at this point. He's always been my favorite. It's just that I've always said that I think guys like Max Fried and probably maybe a guy like Zach Gallen or some other players aren't super far behind him. But I think at this point, it's probably it's pretty safe to say that it's probably his award to lose at this point. But yeah, so I just always felt that it was probably going to be a little bit closer than we all thought it was going to be in the voting. But for sure, I think it's Sandy at this point.
So one question for you guys, it's out of someone that's just going to hop in really quick. You know how the MVP award is it matters about how good the team is. Is the same set for the Cy Young award? Is it as important to be on a good team for the Cy Young as it is for the most valuable player?
No, never really has been, because it's so much easier to separate pitching from team performance, right? Especially now with the way that we have fielder independent stats to look at if necessary. And really, that's the only case, weirdly enough, against Sandy, is because he's somebody that throughout his career has overachieved his FIP and his independent stats, especially this year. Like this year, more than ever, even his strikeout rate isn't really any better than it's been in the past. The difference has been just this unrivaled ability to create soft contact and to also create that soft contact early in plate appearances in order to work deep into games. That's what makes him like really unusual, but also because of separating it from team performance. And you just look at the history. There's a long history of guys, including DeGrom, when the Mets were terrible. Like he was winning Cy Youngs even before they started to progress in any way. I'd say you could almost look at it. There's almost no like correlation between like the team performance and the Cy Young winners in recent years. And that actually goes back a long time too. You go back generations, and that's always been the case. So it is very different from MVP in that standpoint. So what I'm curious to see is actually where he finishes in MVP voting. Do you guys think he's going to get a solid amount of inclusion, at least in top 10s for people filling out those ballots? That's really the only question, is if he gets any sort of recognition that way.
I think he gets one. Yeah, I was going to say I hope he gets one top 5, maybe 1 or 2 top 5 votes. A 5th place vote would be great. Same way that Edwin Diaz will get a couple Cy Young votes in the top 5. But yeah, I think he's more than deserving. He's up there in WAR. He's up there in innings. He's going to lead the league in by 30 innings pitched. And imagine this team without Sandy Alcantara. I think that's also where you have to think about.
Yeah, I think. Who was going to go? Who was saying?
Go ahead, Adam.
Okay. Yeah. No. Kevin, go ahead. My dog's barking.
Okay. No, I was just going to mention. Yeah, I think at least 1 or 2 top 10 votes, maybe a top 5, as Isaac was mentioning, because we already kind of know who the NL MVP is. It's Paul Goldschmidt, and it's not really even close at this point. But yeah, if Sandy could get a couple MVP votes, it just shows how writers think about Sandy, not only as the Cy Young, but as the best player in the NL, in the 2022 season. So it would be nice to see him get a couple votes. They would also obviously consider him a top 10 player in the NL. So maybe even in baseball now, when Cy Young is won by him. And the question I think would be, when Cy Young, would it be unanimous or not? I think is something Eli mentioned a couple, I want to say weeks ago or maybe a month ago. If that after, I think it was the shutout with the Dodgers, or not the shutout, the complete game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think in general, like you guys know how I'm biased for the MVP, that I think it's probably going to be Goldschmidt. It's definitely going to be Goldschmidt. But I think like you guys have votes for Arenado. It's going to be definitely interesting in St. Louis to see how the votes are going to be split for Arenado and Goldschmidt. You have guys like Machado. You have players like Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman is going to be up there. In terms of your pitcher that's going to receive MVP votes from your Cy Young, it's definitely going to be Sandy, and he will for sure. Yeah, 3 Cardinals that Isaac said will finish in the top 10. That's going to be like, I think probably also Tommy Edman is the other one he's thinking about. And for sure Tommy Edman is a player who's been an absolutely fantastic for the Cardinals this year. But in general, I think it's going to be tough to see Sandy really make a case for MVP. He might finish in the top 20, top 15, but really seeing him in the top 10 is going to be hard, just given the quality of bats and especially like the bias that we have for hitters in the MVP voting, which I'm against. I personally, like, if it were up to me, I would be ranking Sandy higher, but unfortunately that's the way the cookie crumbles with BWAA votings.
Yeah, and with that, I want to change the topic. Going from that past series and Sandy, I want to go talk about prospects as we have Mason here and talking about the Marlins. Mason, I wanted to ask you just overall, when I say the Marlins, just how would you rank their farm system and maybe in terms of all MLB? Are they in the top? Are they a middle tier farm system? Just where do the Marlins fall for you?
Probably towards like the back end of the top 20. Like maybe 15, 16, 17, I'd say. Just because like the last 2 drafts, I really haven't been a huge fan of their – well, actually, I like Mayer, but I wasn't a big fan of the Berry pick, which wasn't great. I wasn't a big fan of Dax Fulton, but he's been pretty good lately, so, he might be jumping up there. And then just like – I feel like they've debuted a decent amount of guys lately, right, in the MLB. Mayer is the recent one, and this year, just they didn't add a ton of guys, in my opinion. So I'd probably keep them 18-ish, right around there.
Mason, I have a question. Who would you consider the better prospect, Max Meyer or Jake Eater?
Definitely Mayer. Yeah, definitely Mayer.
Cool.
Yeah. You talked about Jacob Berry, and that's been just a really big point just between us here at Fish Stripes. Maybe even more than Twitter. Just I was looking at your rankings, and you had him, I believe, in the 30s, and the Marlins taking him, top 6, number 6. We have guys like Brooks Lee still on the board, Kevin Parada. Just how did you rank Jacob Berry just before that draft, and maybe did the Marlins make the right choice at number 6?
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked other guys. Brooks Lee, like you just said, was definitely a big one. With Barry, the issue with me is like, what's the difference in career outcomes between him and someone like Sonny DiChiara or Ivan Melendez or Tyler Locklear or Dominic Keegan or any of their 14th rounder or 13th rounder, the first baseman they drafted in Missouri, Torrin Montgomery. Like there's a chance even he's better than Barry. Like the randomness of first basemen and run production. And I mean, Montgomery was pretty good too. He was on the same team as Barry, wasn't he? In single A?
Yeah.
Like it's just so much is dependent on your skill set on offense that it's just so tough to just bet on that. Whereas like you can get that same value 30 picks later and maybe a better player with Melendez who went like 43rd, 44th, and then Locklear went 52 picks later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I want to ask you about the pitching that they took. Were you a fan of most of those draft picks when it comes to pitching, or no?
You need to refresh me on who did they draft from the pitching.
I guess the main one would be Jacob Miller.
Miller, Kyle Krieger, I believe Marcus Johnson was another one.
Krieger, I loved, out of LA Tech. Did they draft another LA Tech guy actually?
Yeah, it was Kyle Krieger and
Cade Gibson.
Cade
Gibson.
Okay, yeah. Both of them I like. They're both older guys. Gibson was like 24, I think. Miller, I was actually kind of lower on just because I didn't love his fastball shape. But like the secondaries are good, so like I get it. Like if you develop him and he gains velo, like he'll probably be decent. It's kind of like Fulton, just different frames. Fulton's obviously huge. They're deep, like kind of bad generic fastball guys in high school. So that's probably my only issue with that.
Yeah, and here's a question. Perfect. How would you rank maybe the Marlins hitting development? They get Jacob Berry, a college bat, because they need bats, almost so desperately. They can get their pitchers. We've seen Max Meyer, Yuri Perez. They can develop their pitchers, but with hitters, it's a completely different story. Just Mason, how do you see the Marlins in terms of just their hitting development and maybe overreaching picks just to get a bat?
I don't know too much about their hitting side, to be honest. I know I like them on the pitching side a little bit. They're really good pitch usage, and they're kind of famous when it comes to changeups. I feel like all their guys have had changeups since they've gotten them. Mayer, right? He had a good changeup. Eater too. And then did Perez also had a changeup?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like that's on the hitting side. Like I couldn't honestly tell you. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they just haven't really been the best in terms of hitting. I want to ask Eli. We're talking about Jacob Berry. Just how would you have gone over that draft? Maybe what were your thoughts, and maybe how Jacob is playing now, compared to maybe how he was in college and maybe what your first thought of him was when we first drafted him?
Well, here's just a refresher about most of this draft class that the Marlins took, where about half of the bonus pool goes to Jacob Berry, and then they went very heavily on pitchers at one point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 straight pitchers before they got into day 3 of the draft. So I think I've made my thoughts about Jacob Berry, again, pretty open, and Mason did a pretty concise job summarizing it, where the upside just isn't that special. And like for a guy that, even though he was drafted as a third baseman, I think, Daniel, you were there on day 1 of him as a professional player, of him attempting to play third base, and that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Yeah. That was the position he played exclusively at Jupiter this year, between doing that and DH, but it shows you just how often that they were DHing him, that they already have concerns about the defense. And just watching him, like, it doesn't even show up statistically, really, his defense. But what I mean is just watching him with eye test and all the plays that he jeopardizes because of having a bad arm, having an inconsistent arm, not to mention, of course, just his reaction time over there, his lack of athleticism. If they do stick him at that position, it'd be emergency only as he moves up the professional ladder. One reason why we brought this up is just the contrast between him and some of the other guys drafted soon after him with the number 6 overall pick. I know with Fish Stripes in particular, a lot of us were disappointed that they simply didn't go with Brooks Lee at that very same spot. Meanwhile, he is still playing, or he was as of yesterday, because he moved all the way up to Double-A coming out of the draft within the first couple months, making it up that high and being more productive at that level than Barry was at low A. So that having those two back to back, having that seeing it play out that way for a player that was available to you that you should have been able to afford. I believe Jacob Berry actually received a larger bonus than Brooks Lee did soon after that. It's painful. It's painful to see. It's still very early on in the process, and ultimately, it's never about a one-person draft. As long as you have several others of these guys make it big, and especially on the pitching side, you need to be optimistic just based on how some of their other draft classes have done, where they don't need to draft somebody at the very top of the draft to make them a very exciting prospect. So it's going to be time. It's going to take a while for this to play out, and ultimately, even if this is a pick that we questioned in the moment and that we continue to second guess right now, ultimately what's most important is this draft class overall. And there's still obviously plenty of hope for these guys, several of them, to emerge as starting caliber players, even if they're not going to help on the offensive side.
Yeah. And I think sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just gonna have you come in. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no. So in general, we see guys like Jacob Berry come in, and it's just like he mentioned, like Mason nailed it with like the profile. It's just there isn't a lot of upside, just because like you're leveraging a lot of risk on the fact that he's going to hit. And it's not that he's not that he's not going to be a good player, Eli. It's just that it's unlikely that he's going to reach the 4 or 5 win plateau. Or like he potentially could. It's just going to be very bat heavy if he does, and it's not going to be much defensively at all. Personally, like I was like really like you want to go for that straight up the middle player, especially when you have a pick that high, or if you want to go for a straight tool or a couple of them, that's great. I really liked a guy like Cam Collier or a guy like Justin Crawford, and Justin Crawford honestly hasn't super panned out early, but it's still obviously just playing in rookie ball and in a couple of games in single A, if I believe. With Cam Collier, I was talking with a buddy of mine. I think Mason also talked about this too, where like the only like offensive comp for him in the past like 10, 15 years, with him like getting his GED at the age of 16, then going to JUCO and absolutely shredding the ball at age 17, is Bryce Harper. And obviously Bryce Harper went 1-1 because he has a much more developed and multidimensional skill set, because he had a rocket for an arm, because he was a catcher, was very quick and could play the outfield. Cam Collier was once, in my if I'm, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was once a shortstop in high school, and then he moved off to third base. I think maybe his senior year, it might have been earlier than that. But the athleticism is still somewhat there, and he projects to potentially be a plus third baseman. And that's the guy I really liked, and he ended up doing super well in rookie ball. Obviously, it's just 50, 60 PAs, or it could be more. But in general, that's the guy that I really liked at the position. And even though he kind of is like he's obviously much more he's much further away, I think he does offer a little bit of a more well-rounded package at this number 6 slot that I think they could have done better with instead of Jacob Berry. That's just how I've always felt. And I got clowned on by my buddies for saying Justin Crawford, but the Cam Collier pick I stand by for sure. I really liked him.
Yeah. Mason, I wanted to ask you, looking at this draft in the Marlins 2022, just is there any name that really stands out to you, maybe an underrated name that maybe Marlins fans should look at for the coming years? Maybe someone a little underrated on that list?
Probably Evan Taylor would be my best bet. He was a reliever at Arkansas and throws a really, really good slider at 80 miles an hour, like 18 inches of horizontal. So he could be a quick mover just out of the bullpen to throw that pitch 60% of the time. I talked to him earlier. I like Montgomery a good amount.
Yeah.
Just as he hit the ball hard at Missouri. He just didn't get the ball in the air a ton, so I don't think he hit a lot of home runs. But like he has good raw power. It's just about getting all of it. And then Taylor and Krieger, actually, both of them had good numbers at LA Tech. Missed bats, had good stuff. Gibson is just super old. He was at Tread, and they kind of revamped his stuff a good amount. Has 3 good pitches. Just the age part was kind of an issue. And then Krieger, just really good stuff. He looks more like a bullpen type, maybe like a multi-inning guy, but also just good stuff. Really good slider, decent fastball. He's a sinker guy, and I like. Marcus Johnson from Duke. He's been like on and off, for Duke. He's had some injury issues, but like I think he's somebody they could definitely develop. Like he looked like a top 50 talent at the beginning of the draft cycle, and I loved him. And then he just kind of fell. They had another guy in their system as well, Henry Williams, that at Duke, that kind of fell like him, and both of them looked really good. So it could have been something at Duke. They lost their pitching coach to the Cardinals 2 years ago, and since then, I don't think they've developed really well, and so that's something the Marlins could probably fix.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you just on that 2022 draft class. We're going to talk about the 2023 one coming up. Just how would you compare those two draft classes, 2022 and now that 2023 one coming up? Is there really a big difference in terms of talent between the two draft classes, or maybe 2023 is way higher, 2022? Just how would you compare the two classes?
I'm really low on the 2023 class. Right now, the guy I have third looks like Austin Martin out of college, and Austin Martin's been really bad in AAA, so I'm a little bit scared. And then the guy I have 18th. In 5 months, he could be higher than the guy I have third. So like I'm not sure right now. Hopefully the pitchers all pan out, Dollander and Waldrip. I'm kind of low on them just because they're pitchers right now. I have no idea what's going to happen to them in 4 weeks, rather less than 4 months. But at the top, I think this would be the first year. I've covered the last 4 drafts nonstop. I think this will be the first time since Adley where the guy that was projected first overall actually goes first overall 12 months later. In 19, it was Adley. In 20, it was 50-50 Hancock Torque. In 21, it was rocker. And then the week after, it was oh shit, lighter. And then this past year, it was a cluster of guys the entire time. It was Elijah for a year. And then it wasn't Elijah, it was Drew. And then it was Jackson Holiday. And then it was Brooks Lee for a month. So I think this year is the first time we finally have a superstar at 1-1 with Cruz.
Yeah, I want to ask you quickly. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know you guys wanted to mention 2023, but I want to go back to 2021 and ask you about Khalil Watson. Just what were your thoughts entering the draft? Did you expect him to drop this low? And now seeing pretty much a year or whatever, however many games he's played in the minor leagues, because we know he had some time off. What have been your thoughts about Khalil Watson from the start of the draft process in 2021 until now, which his low A season has ended?
Well, his issue's been he swings so much, and I think he's been so talented for so long that he got into the minor leagues and just thought he just out talented everybody, and he just kept swinging out of his ass. And when he hit the ball, he had some of the best contact while in the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. And when he came back from that incident or whatever, he actually dropped his swing rate below 50% for the last 2 months. It was 41% the second last month, and then 42% in the other month, and it was 56, 58%. And so his chase rates dropped. And as the season went along after the first month, his numbers continuously got better. He was really good the first month, stunk for 3 months, and then the last 2 months, I think he had like a 310 WOBA, 305 WOBA, which is like the highest since like the second month of the season. And so I think the fact that he swung way less and saw more pitches was a big part of that too.
And I want to go into that same draft class and ask you about Joe Mack, just your thoughts on him so far. I know he's been injured, so he hasn't been playing too much, but when he has been on the field, he's been hitting pretty well so far. I'm pretty sure the last time I checked the numbers. So just want to get your thoughts on that Joe Mack selection, and how do you think he will pan out in the future?
Yeah, he's been like pretty much doing exactly what like I thought, like not like crazy good. Like he was like those tweener types at catcher where like he wasn't a superstar hitter, but like he was good enough, and then he was also good enough behind the plate. And like, I mean, he's been pretty much around average, maybe slightly above average, just because he's kind of young, those northern kids. I mean, he hasn't been special, but like when you look at someone like Watson, you know, like you got to feel pretty good with him now.
Yeah, and, I was talking with one of my friends earlier, and I said like Khalil, like a lot of people have Khalil in the 40 like FB tier now at this point, because I think they said like that obviously the tools are there, and the tools are something that would usually go away. It's just as how he's able to actually put bats to ball. I'm talking Khalil Watson, going back to him. Obviously not Joe Mack, but with Khalil Watson, I'm kind of curious to say, like, would it be crazy to still have him in that potentially 45 or even 50 FV tier, even with the really, really concerning approach and discipline issues early on? Like, I know he's 19 and he's already having this kind of issues, but the fact that he's, like you mentioned, he's cut down his strikeout rates or like his chase rates and in zone whiff rates pretty considerably over the course of the season. Do you think, do you think he's still salvageable as a potential like all-star or like potential really good player that could be a really good strong contributor on the Marlins for years to come?
Yeah, I mean, like it's like the reverse Jacob Berry, where like he's so athletic that like eventually that's just going to catch up with other guys, and he's going to start like performing when he puts the head stuff together and the mental piece.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So anyway, these are some of the numbers from Khalil down the stretch right after he got back from. You said it was multiple incidents that like led to this internal discipline that eventually made it back to Jupiter at the end of July, and overall. Again, forget that's just 19 playing in full season ball, finally putting up the numbers. What was weird is that he hit a bunch of home runs right at the start of the year. And so that was the only thing missing down the stretch in terms of over the fence power, but still plenty of slug overall. And yeah, we'll be curious to see exactly what they do with him moving forward, because they spent most of the year at low A. I imagine there's a pretty solid chance he gets promoted to the start of next year, despite the overall numbers being a little iffy one way or another. But yeah, we've talked a lot about Khalil on this show. Alex Carver, who's not with us right now, he was a big he's completely off of the Khalil train. He was the one hoping that they would just cut ties with him and trade him at the deadline in some sort of complicated deal, but that didn't happen. And so I'm glad they were patient with him moving forward, as I think Daniel is hopping back in with us just in time.
I'm just glad that Khalil hasn't Robert Puasoned his way like out of prospectum, like in a way that like, you know, he did. Mason, like I wanted to kind of ask you about, and this is an opinion that like I shared, but like I wanted to see what you thought. There probably isn't many other better teenage pitchers in the world, but there is one name I have besides Yuri Perez. There's probably one name I have in mind, and I wanted to kind of see kind of like what your idea is like about Yuri and maybe other guys that could compare to him at that kind of level. I wanted to see, like, there's a guy I know that you've mentioned and you talked about. You're probably also very high on him the way that you described him in your prospect list, but I wanted to get an idea of who like without any bias, who you thought could potentially be competing with him, and like I guess your overall thoughts on Yuri as well.
I love him. Yeah, I think him and Grayson are like if you take Grayson over him, I'll agree with you. And if you want to take Yuri, I'll agree with it. Like they're so close. I think Yuri's just also so young and so good, and like he's already like he has a track record already at such a young age. Yeah, I think he's easily the best teenage pitcher. I'll put Painter in the conversation for sure. I mean, he's like a baby Verlander. It's just the only difference is he's in a league where people understand why Verlander was so good. So he's not going to have the advantage of like people not understanding why they're swinging under his fastball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I actually, like, personally, I had Painter ranked just a little bit higher, but I guess like you had like a very good reason for what you said too. I just thought like I like his changeup shape a little bit better than Yuri's, or I don't even think Yuri, or he does have one. I think his secondaries just are a little bit better than Yuri's, but I think like both of them are been like absolutely fantastic, and like along with him, Yuri, and you mentioned Grayson, Espino, and if you want to go international, Roki have been they're right up there amongst the best pitching prospects in the world. So I think and especially the guys who are not even 20, you got Yuri and Painter who have been absolutely fantastic. So they're all going to be very fun to watch, and they're going to be great major leaguers in a decade or so.
And the final on me here, Mason, I want to ask you 2019, I believe, JJ Bleday. So just your thoughts on him. He makes his big league debut. He gets off to a pretty good start. The walk, the at-bats look good. He gets the home where he's walking at the high rate, but he's just been on a weird trajectory where he's just going down a little bit. What were your thoughts about Bleday entering that 2019 draft, and just looking at him now, finally in the big leagues, along with a good amount of these 2019 draftees that were with him? So just want to get your thoughts on him, and what do you think would be his ceiling now that you've seen a couple weeks of Bleday at the big league level?
Yeah, so in 19, I did not like Bleday whatsoever. I think I had him like 15th. I didn't like have a draft board, but like I did not have him high because his swing. I just hate his swing, which was a terrible reasoning. But looking back, that was my reasoning. I actually had college date on him, and like if I redid it, I'd probably have him like top 5, top 6, just like the Heston Kjerstad mold, kind of an ugly swing, but it works. And like I feel like he wasn't good in the minor leagues for a while, right? He struggled for the first couple of years. So like, I mean, Painter wasn't bad this year, but he also wasn't great. So maybe that's something he could kind of do, like just continue to like get better as the levels progress. Like then this year, all of a sudden he became like really, really good. I feel like, did he not start out the big leagues doing like good? Like I thought he like his first couple of games, he was like, he hit a bomb or something, no?
Yeah. In a very small sample, he made a good impression with the quality of his takes and how low his chase rate was. And he did have a couple of homers. It's just that it's not like particularly, I don't even know if it's plus power. Like it's enough to get over the wall. He's turned himself into a super pull heavy type of hitter where I guess it's not that much different from Jacob Berry, right? Where it's enough power to get over the right field wall as long as he gets the pitches he wants to. It's just that there's not a lot in between where he's a guy that just doesn't get many other hits outside of that. And then even recently, the power has kind of dried up. So now we're like a quarter of the year into the major league season since he's been up. And what is it? Is it 4 or 5 home runs? Where the overall package is kind of meh. And they're playing him, Mason, they're playing him in center field almost every single day. And that has not worked out very well.
Just straight like 45 in center field. There's no reason to put him there. It's so funny.
Yeah.
You're muted, Daniel.
Oh, my bad. The question I want to ask Mason, again, with the draft classes 2022, 2023, is just with this draft class coming up, is it like last year's draft class where there wasn't a lot of just top pitching prospects? Because I was looking at your list last year pitching. There wasn't a guy, I believe, 19th with the first pitcher you had in this 2023. Is there a pitcher maybe that could go in the top 5, top 3, or is it again maybe pitching isn't really at the top of this draft class?
That's just mostly because I hate pitchers of the draft, to be honest. That's why they're like, I think Dollander could be a top 3 pick. It's just like he's a pitcher, so there's so much that could happen. So I'm just like right now it's just a future value system, and so I'm trying to predict his medium career outcome. And like in a year, he could just be a different. He could get hurt. Connor Prelude got hurt. I feel like a bunch of the top guys last year got hurt. I mean, I would take Dollander over every pitcher in the last 2 drafts. Wow. Maybe Leiter. It's close. Leiter was also a different pitcher in college because he used spider tack, and now he doesn't. So it's like tough.
Yeah, and I think like just to kind of add on to that, one of the big reasons we saw a lot of slip into pitching selection is because there are a lot of injuries as well, right? We saw Dylan Lesko to go down. We saw a couple other guys in the college ranks go down as well. I mean, even like with Dylan Lesko, industry-wide, he was considered to be amongst one of the best prep pitchers in several years. But I think overall, just with this last year, like Mason, I agree. Like it's very scary to really bank on pitchers, especially prep pitchers, very early on. unless you're kind of like you like the stuff really well and you have your research on your the medicals and like you've seen a lot of fatalities, especially I think in 2014. I'm blanking on his name right now completely. He was an Astros pick, Brady Aiken. But I think like in general, it's just we've seen a lot of injuries with these players, and I think next year is probably just hopefully we don't have that same kind of issue or that same kind of unluckiness with the prospect depth. And then hopefully potentially we'll see more pitchers selected in the very top of the draft. One of the guys I like is Christian Little. Like he's maybe just I'm a little bit biased just because he's a local kid. He grew up like 30 minutes from where I live and now he's at Vandy. He probably could have been a first rounder, potentially a second rounder had he gone out. I think it was a couple of years ago in 2020. But now he's obviously at Vanderbilt and pitching pretty decently, and hopefully he'll be a good selection. That's one of the guys I like for next year.
Yeah, I think the last question I have for this 2023 draft, I think I have to ask for, where all of us are local here in Miami, one of the top prospects there, third baseman Yohandy Morales. If that's someone you're looking at, Mason, just where does he fall on it as someone like him, a power-hitting third baseman?
Yeah, I love Yohandy. I have him 12th right now, and he's in that tier of guys that could be in the top 5. He hits the ball really well. He's like a fringy shortstop third base. He probably ends up at third base as like a plus defender, but he's played shortstop in college. He does swing and miss a good amount, but the power is really, really good. So I think you got to bet on that and the fact that he's going to be a good defender as well. And I mean, it seems like a really good fit, right, in Miami. If they don't land like Cruz or somebody, if they don't get the first pick.
Well, would you have taken him over Jacob Berry?
Oh, easily, yes. Yeah, easily.
Listen, quick question. I know Daniel said the last one about 2023, but I'm gonna still steal one here. You said Dylan Cruz was like a runaway like potential number 1. That you said you really liked him. Can you kind of go in depth? Like the Marlins are in contention for having the number 1 pick, and Dylan Cruz is someone I like as well. But like I personally didn't have him ranked as quickly as high. But like I kind of want to get your idea. What makes him so special, and what do you think he could potentially be as a major leaguer?
Yeah, so since he's joined college, he leads all of college baseball in balls hit over 100, over 110, over 90, and he leads it in amount of balls hit over 100 to the opposite field. He has like the perfect bat path and bat speed combination. It's like a flat path, and he catches the ball up front too, so he can still lift it even though it's a flat path. He has bat speed, hits the ball hard. He's like a center field, right field fringe. Like he might be like Blade, like a 45 in center field, 55 in right field. Like I'm not confident enough. I haven't watched enough defense of him yet to say for sure. But like he's good enough defensively and he's good enough athlete to be valuable. He's not like a left fielder DH type. And then he's literally performed for like 2 straight years in the SEC. As a 19-year-old, he performed. I think he was an 18-year-old for part of the season actually. And then this year he wasn't as good as his freshman year, but like I don't know how you can top that year. And he was good for 3 years in high school, and then he stunk for 4 months after changing his swing, and at the US he stunk, and like he's been good for so long, So it's just track record and pedigree and current performance right now.
Yeah, I want to do something kind of fun here. We have that draft lottery up there. Eli, is there any way we can sim that lottery, and then with every pick we'll have Mason make a pick for the Marlins after this is the 2023 draft?
Yeah, you'll just need to give me a minute. Yeah, I'll just need to pump that off for a minute and then pull it up in a separate tab, and we'll do that. Yeah, that's a draft simulator from Tankathon, and just a reminder to people that this upcoming draft is the first one where they do have a lottery system. Mm-hmm. As long as you miss the playoffs, teams are you have an opportunity to win the top pick, and it's flat odds for the 3 worst records in the majors. Somehow, some way, the Marlins are still alive to potentially have one of the 3 worst records in the majors by masterfully tanking over like this second half of the season, kind of inadvertently. They've gotten into this situation. But why this series is so important for the Marlins is because them and the Cubs are kind of neck and neck in that situation, and there is a pretty material difference in odds between moving up a couple of spots and moving down a couple of spots.
Yeah.
So this could be proving pretty critical. We could sim the lottery right here. Yeah. But with the Cubs of all teams in the number 1 pick.
So wait, let's do it 2 more times. 2 more times, and just get this thing real refreshed.
Okay. Oh,
Hey,
you're doing it.
Danny, come on.
You said 2 more. You said 2 more,
One
Danny.
more, I guess. One more.
Okay.
All right, and then it'll be
Too
the
good to be
official
true.
one.
Too good to be
8th.
true.
All right, I guess. Let's do both. Let's do 1 and 8. I'm guessing number 1 will be Dylan Cruz if the Marlins are with the number 1 pick.
Yeah, Cruz for sure. And then second,
And then the 8th, how do the
8th?
and if it was the
I'll go
8th
Wyatt
pick, where are the
Langford.
Marlins?
Wyatt Langford from Florida.
Ooh. Well, and what position and how would he impact the Marlins with the 8th pick?
He's a left field, right field, probably left field only. Just pure power. Hits the crap out of the ball in the air. I
So
think he
he's
had 20 home runs last year, 20 plus.
that's a real Marlins pick then. he's really channeling his inner, because like I feel like that's like Mason, that doesn't seem like a profile that you like, right? Like the left field only. 'Cause, like I feel like that's like, I'm more being like facetious when I'm saying that's like the Marlins prototype, because that shouldn't be anyone's prototype, I feel. But like that is kind of interesting how you say like, oh, if he's like the only, like he's like a left field only potential DH going down the defensive spectrum type, that he would be selected as high. Do you buy the bat that much that he's that good with the bat?
Yeah, and the fact that the draft is not very good too. Like I think Barry would be like top 20 in this year's draft. Just how early it is, I haven't seen everybody, and it's just a lower year for talent, I think.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah. Hopefully
It definitely
the
fits the
Marlins
mold
work out in
for
that second
Barry,
one.
too.
What was that?
It definitely fits the mold for what they picked last year, and then they picked in 2020 or 2019.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. Kevin, I haven't asked you anything. Do you have anything you want to mention about prospects? Or I'm not used to you being this quiet during the stream.
No, man, I'm just listening. No, I'm not nothing right now. These guys have all nailed it, and I think it's time to preview some Cubs and Marlins. Why not?
Yeah, just real quickly, a reminder, because on the last stream it was just me and Adam, but we talked a lot about the fall league guys, and that's something that on the prospect side we'll be focusing on just 2 weeks from now before the Arizona Fall League starts out, and that is headlined for the Marlins by Joe Mack, by Victor Mesa Jr., and mostly by Jose Salas. So all 3 of those guys going out to the desert in a couple weeks. Just FYI.
Yeah. Now talking about this series coming up between the Marlins and the Cubs. We're gonna probably go this really quick and then maybe go back to some more prospects because Marlins have not been the hottest of teams as of late. Kevin, what are you looking forward to the series between the Cubs and the Marlins, 2 teams that have faced each other earlier this season?
Pretty sure the Marlins lost the series last time they went up to Wrigley Field, so hopefully they could end up winning it. I'm excited for this first game. It's Edward Cabrera on the mound. At this point, you're just excited to watch these young pitchers go out there. Edward for game 1. It's Trevor for game. No, not Trevor. I'm sorry. Pablo for game 2. It says TBD for game 3, but I just believe that'll be Jesus Luzardo if anyone wants to make sure. I think that's how their rotation is lined up. So we look at both lineups here. It just looks pretty normal. But looking at Chicago's pitcher, it is Wade Miley. He is a soft toss lefty, I believe, or at least he is an off-speed pitcher. So let's see how much trouble Miami will have with that this year. And as you notice, there's not much red at all on both sides. These teams are pretty similar in record at the moment. I believe Chicago has 2 more wins. First time we'll see Franmil Reyes. There's no Wilson Contreras. So just for the ones making their predictions, he's not going to be in the series. He's on the 10-day IL. I would know because he is on my lovely fantasy team and screwed me over. What else can we talk about the Cubs? Not much. Ian Happ is there. They don't have Frank Schwindel. He got DFA'd.
Is Morales not starting, or is he hitting 9th?
He's hitting 9th.
Okay, delicious.
Christopher Morel has not been the greatest since the All-Star break. I believe he's hitting 190 something. So just so you guys have that there. And yeah, it's just 2 bad teams going at it, or 2 teams that are not the greatest going at it right now. And we'll see how that ends up.
You know, Mason, who do you think has a brighter future? I don't know if you guys covered this. Chicago or Miami?
Ooh.
I'll go Cubs. I guess that's tough. They're so close.
Yeah, that shows you how much Miami's system and organization has really gone down. It's not, the system isn't where people think it is. And the Cubs, I never thought they had a great farm system, but even that it's a conversation, it's a little disheartening for Marlins fans.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Mason. Were you done, or were you still talking, or was it somebody else who said that?
I didn't
It was
know.
Isaac.
Oh, no, yeah. So I just thought, like, me personally, I feel like it's just going to be Chicago as a definite runaway, just because they have the hitting prospects and the pitching as well, at least developing it. And you see a lot of guys in the minor leagues for Chicago. I think they might have in a year arguably one of the best farm systems in all baseball. They don't already have one right now. You've got guys like Brennan Davis, who's going to be up there next year. James Triantos is a favorite. Owen Casey is a really, really favorite of mine. You still got hopefuls in Christian Hernandez. He hasn't really been that good. Preciado has been a pretty decent, or he actually been really bad this year. But who was the other guy? PCA has been fantastic as well, and Canario. The list goes through with the depth, in my opinion, at least with both offense and pitching. I have a stronger hope for the Cubs to rebound with their rebuild and have a more success long term.
And I want to ask you this, Mason, just in general, who has the best minor league system in baseball, and who has the worst minor league system in baseball?
The Phillies.
Phillies are pretty good.
Phillies, yeah, they got to be up there. Definitely the best three pitching prospects. Nationals, James Wood, Elijah, Brady House, if he figures it out. I'll put them up there. Orioles, I mean, they have so many guys. They lost Gunnar, which hurts, and they lost DL. Yeah, Nationals or Orioles, I'll go with.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I wanted to ask also Mason, we're talking about the Cubs and we're talking about first-round picks. I wanted to talk about the first-round pick the Cubs made earlier this season in Cade Horton, because that's a guy that almost came out of nowhere, especially with his playoff performances, striking out 13, 11, 8 a couple times. Just how has he been for the Cubs, and maybe how do you think he could impact that team in the future?
I think he's really good. Yeah, one of the best breaking balls in the country. His fastball was improving a little bit. It's still an unknown commodity. It should be a sinker, or if he should keep trying to carry it as a four-seamer. But I mean, for 2 months, he was one of the best pitchers in the country. And then everybody saw him when the lights are on, and he shoved.
Yeah. So you don't think he could be a Shohei Ohtani type two-way player?
No. I mean, he was a decent hitter in college. When the draft cycle started, I had him listed as a hitter instead of a pitcher.
Oh.
And then 2 months in, I finally changed him.
Yeah. Speaking of just all these players, and now looking at this one with the Marlins and the Cubbies, just what really stands out also up to you, Kevin, or excuse me, Adam, when looking at these? I want to go out to the Cubs and just, is there anything really that sticks out to you when looking at the Cubbies lineup, Adam?
Yeah, so the biggest one I think that we see Franmil Reyes now with the Cubs, and he's obviously someone who is known to be making solid contact whenever he does, and he has a very high average exit velo, as we've seen. He's just someone that's really his only calling card in the major leagues. He's a very, very poor defender in right field, which is why he's now a DH and no longer on the field. There isn't really much dimensionality to him, which is why he's found himself off of the Padres and now the Guardians roster. Wow. So I think in general, he's just been it's just been a really tough season in general for the Cubs, but I feel like you've got a lot of different hopeful players out there, especially with Franmil Reyes, and a lot of potential players with just a lot of upside and a lot of guys that you can see who you're going to get for trade value next year, especially with Ian Happ, who looks like he potentially will be on his way out of Chicago if he's not going to be re-signed, the potential to deadline next year. Especially McKinstry is another fun player to see. Very similar outcomes for the rest of the season, and they're kind of the same idea of what they want to do and just give guys opportunities and see what they do.
I just realized David Bodie's still on the Chicago Cubs. I haven't heard that.
I wanted to mention really quick, we haven't even talked about this, and that's the injuries to the Marlins.
Oh, yeah.
With Trevor Rogers out for the season, Jeff Chisholm getting surgery. Eli, with Trevor Rogers getting injured, this has not really been the season that Marlins fans were hoping for. Do you think he can come back, or maybe what is your take on Trevor Rogers' 2022 year?
Well, on one hand, I don't know if there was going to be a significant difference one way or the other between how he performed the last few starts of the year. This was not going to dramatically change the way that we felt about Trevor for better or worse, even if he was healthy. And fortunately, just a grade 1 strain, like that's something where you don't worry at all about any implications it could have for next year. He'll be back to 100% healthy by that point, you think. But there's no doubt that this was a really concerning year. I was somebody that I was of the opinion that there was going to be some regression from him. I wanted him to add some kind of fourth pitch or to make that slider, the third pitch, a little bit more trustworthy, and we just didn't see that change. And I actually had some video queued up because the main difference with him like this past year is just his fastball looked like it was a pretty special pitch last year in terms of where he commanded it and the way that he used it and the characteristics of it. And for whatever reason, like this year, his fastball just got hammered again and again. These are all fastball home runs where it didn't help that he was missing his spots in some of these. But the more you compare like 2021 to 2022, it's hard to put your finger on exactly why he went from being an all-star pitcher to being a replacement level pitcher. Even when the stuff like looked exactly the same as the previous year, the results were completely different. And pitching is complicated. This is a guy that, as this time a year ago, we were talking about him as being on the short list of most indispensable players in the entire Marlins organization. And now we enter a situation where is he even in the projected rotation if they hold on to everybody this offseason? Maybe. He's probably battling for the 5th spot, certainly behind Sandy and Pablo, if they keep Pablo, and Luzardo and Cabrera. And between him and Braxton Garrett, that's all of a sudden like a very interesting comparison, despite how drastically different it looked at this time just 1 year ago with him. So no doubt it was just a terrible year for him. And it really complicates, for example, his trade value. Like if they feel he's on the outside looking in, they're just not going to get even a fraction in return of what they may have gotten the year before. So I still am optimistic about him. He's still relatively young and he's still pre-arbitration eligible. So, and as long as they hold on to Mel Stoudemire, as long as he is part of the next coaching staff next year, I trust them to troubleshoot this issue and like get him back to a place where he's like somewhere in between being a superstar and being replacement level, where he's at least a trusty starter overall. But it was no doubt it was a frustrating year. And even though there were bright sides on the other side of this recent injury, like it wasn't compelling enough to like feel great heading into next year. It was just a really bad year for him. No way to sugarcoat it.
And you saw that when Braxton came back, you kind of noticed how they felt about Trevor and Braxton, that they sent Braxton down pretty much as the odd man out of this rotation. I assume he'll be back up now that Trevor's injured, so we'll see when that move is made. This is just my opinion, thinking about how the rotation lines up. They're both lefties. So, Eli, I'm going to ask you very quickly. Do you think there'll be kind of a competition in spring training between Rogers and Braxton to see who gets one of those rotation spots? Both lefties. You know, Braxton really good this season when you look at it. Just a complete bounce back, completely different from his prior Major League experience to 2022. Do you see some kind of competition entering spring training between these two guys?
I think this is too early to talk about this just because we feel like it's inevitable they're going to trade one of these starting pitchers at one phase of their career. Maybe it's as simple as Pablo. Maybe it's just the one that's closest to free agency and they keep everybody else. But I still want to see that play out before like projecting that one way or the other. I mean, the thing with Trevor is that he still has multiple minor league options left where he's in a situation where even next year is honestly not make or break for him. Like even if it's a longer road to get back to being the best version of himself, there's no urgency for him necessarily to win out. In fact, Braxton Garrett has even one less option when it comes to him. So even if his ceiling is a lot lower because the fastball isn't quite the same in any way that Trevor's is, Braxton looks like a starter. Like he has a starter profile. He has a really deep pitch mix, and that slider took such a huge step forward over the last year that like it's not the worst thing in the world that Braxton Garrett is in your rotation entering next year.
That leads me to a question, Eli. If they were to go ahead and trade some minor league pitchers instead of these major leaguers and go into next year with all of them, with all 6 or 7 of them, who would you want to see in the bullpen? Who do you think would really thrive there and be better?
That's a frustration I've had about this year, is that they didn't try out more of these really like impact arms as relievers at some point, and that you're kind of flying blinds where you're putting them in positions that they have not been in at any point in their pro careers to this point, because that's what I think the path is to like turning this bullpen around. And something that gets under discussed is how terrible this bullpen is and how like drastically different even this season would be if they went from having a bad bullpen to having a good bullpen. I think the most direct way to address that, other than like taking flyers on minor league free agents, is by converting some of these excess guys into relievers. Would it be? I think Trevor has to be a candidate for that, just because we've seen in his starts where the velocity fades as he goes 2 and 3 times through an order in a more dramatic way than these other guys. And because like you're not even fully confident in his current 3-pitch mix, and I don't think it's expanding from there. Like he's a guy that does have some limitations in terms of the different weapons that he has to use. And if you're just facing everybody once and you're in that small role, like he could be great in that role. It's hard to believe that we're talking about this so recently removed from him being like such an integral piece of their rotation outlook. But that would not be a surprise to me if he ends up in that reliever role, and if he ends up being like a high leverage guy. The issue is that he just has no experience doing that. So you're kind of just starting from scratch and hoping that he would take to that kind of role, even when to this point, all he's ever known is being a starter.
Did Trevor get into relief during the playoff series against the Braves, or did he start that game?
He won it one time, but
I'm just saying. I'm just remembering the one time he did go into a relief role.
I mean, it's that even right after last year, I don't think it'd be such a surprise that we are talking about it eventually, because even during his close to Rookie of the Year campaign, he wasn't going deep into games very often at all, and during that second half of the season, it was tough for him to get past the 5th for a while, if I remember correctly. So I guess, maybe it was a little short, or not recency bias enough, but yeah, I did see that. I think we lost Mason.
Right before prediction time.
We didn't get his prediction.
I think he got bored of Trevor Rogers.
I guess to kind of hop in on what you were saying, you've got a long list of guys who are, got like Sandy, Pablo, Trevor, Jesus, Cabrera. Yeah, this is a fantastic problem to have. You want to I think obviously you probably it's going to be very interesting to see how it happens next year and how it's going to play out in spring training. I think at this point, if I had to guess, I think it's probably going to be Braxton, who's the odd man out, but by no means should he be in starting next year in AAA. You can easily find you can easily tinker, manipulate pitching like nowadays. Like the way we're looking at pitching distribution is no longer by starts and who's on the team, it's by innings. So you can definitely divide not just by 5 starts and 150 innings per starter. You can do 140, 130 for one of those guys and give some more maybe 100 innings to a 6th starter and have him spot start and long relieve and have some higher leverage situations. I believe in Braxton. I just think that's just a bevy of talent there.
Yeah. I think with that, it's time for the part of the show that we all love. Eli, if you get the video.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
Kevin, you're going to lead us off. I don't have to do the rules. You're a veteran. What is your prediction for this series, sir?
Oh, I've never done this one. Marlins 3. There's a 3-game set.
Oh my God.
Chicago takes 2. Shut up, Isaac. Chicago
thinking out loud.
Chicago takes 2. Ian Happ is the MVP.
Ooh, exactly like Bella's.
Oh, Eli, do we have the records from?
Of course. Hold on just a moment while I pull that up.
Wait,
no, I don't think I did take it. I didn't take an updated one. We are still tied because both of us and most other people. I can show you the previous one because almost everybody got shut out on the last one, so it's barely changed whatsoever. The only one that picked up, I think, significant points last time was Adam. So. Didn't Adam get it perfectly? No, maybe not. I'm thinking of somebody else. This was the previous one before the National Series, but very few of us had the Nationals winning. Kevin picked up 1 point because he had Sandy as MVP. I think Gabriel picked up 1 or 2 points as well in 10th place. So this is not updated. I apologize. I didn't take the new screenshot, but Daniel and I are still tied at the very top because we both had the Marlins winning the previous series. And
Eli leading in series points. I'm in series MVP.
Yeah.
Kevin, come on, man. 46 points.
I need a big series here. Hopefully it happens.
Let's go to the floating head in front of Lone Depot Park.
All right. So I fixed it just as you were painting to me. So I'm going to go Cubbies win 2 out of 3 here. And I was torn with my MVP pick between Jan and Nico Horner and Seiya, but I'm going to go with Nico Horner as my MVP pick.
That's a good
with
one.
Chicago winning 2 out of 3.
All right, let's go to Mr. Isaac Azu.
No
Best
camera
profile
control.
picture in business.
I believe that Miami will sweep the Chicago Cubs.
Oh, God, here
And
we
I
go.
believe that Edward Cabrera will be the most valuable player.
That's a good prediction.
Damn.
MVP prediction.
All right, let's go to Eli.
I just want to comment. People are not doing their research with Nico Horner. I don't think he's
Yeah,
going
I
to
was
play
gonna
in the
say.
series. He's like a day-to-day injury.
Can we fix it? Yeah, I'm going to fix my prediction.
I don't know.
Well,
Yeah,
while I'm up,
we have
I'll
it.
go very quickly. I do have the Marlins winning the series 2 out of 3, and I have Edward Cabrera as my MVP.
Okay.
All right, Eli.
I'll just change my pick to Jan Gomes then as my MVP. Not Nico.
Let me. Do we have? I believe Mr. Grant. I think you have Cubs 2 out of 3, and he has Patrick Wisdom as his MVP.
Why do you have
I
a Michael
agree.
Kopech poster?
I like it. It's autographed. You can see his little autograph there.
I can't see.
It's such a random player. Okay.
I don't know. I got him and Yan Okada from Mystery Box, but that's besides the point. I'm gonna go Cubs. Take 2 out of 3, and my MVP. I'm gonna go Ian Happ. Why not? Their best player. Nothing really else to go with it. I think the Marlins are gonna win. Are gonna win this series.
Very good. So there is almost certainly going to be a lead change in our picks. Actually, there has to be. There's required to be a lead change between Daniel and I because one of us is going to get points for the series result, and one of us is not. So, wow, everybody's
Have
on
we
the edge of their
figured out,
seats, watching
figured
every
out a
moment of
prize?
this game to see who is going to prevail.
I
Is
can't
there a
believe
prize for the winner? Is there a prize?
No,
Is there a
only if
prize
I
for-
win.
Is there
I
a
win.
prize?
There's a
For,
prize.
is there a prize for person who has most points per on average per series? I feel like I might be on that.
How do you even? No, you could calculate that for us, Adam.
I need Eli to have more sips of wine.
Honestly,
And
I
then
think
that's
Bella
what
would
I-
win that one, guys.
She's been pretty good. Pretty good.
She knows her
Alright,
stats.
I still have some few minutes before first pitch. Anything you guys want to talk about really quick? Kevin, you haven't been here in forever.
I know it sucks. I won't even be on the next one. So, spoiler alert.
Yeah. All right. For that, for myself, for Daniel, for Kevin, Eli, Isaac, Adam, for Mason, who was here, who's I believe doing something for his college right now. That does it for us here on Fish Stripes Live. Always go fish.
We gotta end it off right. We gotta